Course 2, Saxon Math, Lesson 2, and we're going to be starting on page 14 of your textbook today. And what we're going to look at is something called properties of operations. That's kind of a fancy way of saying we can put a couple of fact families out there and show the operation. So let's start with this. On page 14, you're going to see 2 plus 3 equals 5. And then you're also going to see 5 minus 3 equals 2. You're going to notice in both of these fact families, and this is exactly what they're going to talk about, similar numbers. There's a 5, there's a 3, and then there is a 2. So on this side we have the property of addition. In this problem we have subtraction. And both of you see how this works, right? Addition and subtraction. If you look at your textbook, we are going to show one fact family that deals with this example of 2 plus 3 equals 5. All right. So if I said 2 plus 3 equals 5, I could also say 3 plus 2 equals 5. And then I could say that 5 minus 3 equals 2, and then 5 minus 2 equals 3. This whole thing right here is called a fact family. All right. So if they give you a couple of numbers to do a fact family, we're looking for 1, 2, 3, 4 facts that would complete the family. All right. That's what's called an operation and then an inverse operation. The inverse operation is the opposite of what the first initial operation was. So here was addition, and then the inverse is going to be subtraction. So addition and subtraction. Okay, pretty easy concept. If we do that example, that is an example of what's called commutative properties of addition. So in your textbook, next up it says a plus b equals b plus a. Okay, what if a was 2 and b was 3? So if I substituted this 2 for a here and substituted a here, and then b here and b here, I would have 2 plus 3 equals 3 plus 2. In other words, 5, if I did the answer, it would be 5 is equal to 5. This is commutative property of addition. I'm gonna put this as a label of CPA. So I have something plus something equals something plus something. Commutative property of addition. Okay? All right. Let's go to the next one where we're going to see identity property of addition. Okay? So if we look at identity property of addition, it looks like this: a plus 0 equals a. All right, so this is identity property of addition. You'll notice addition, okay, because of the plus sign. Identity property, so if I said a is equal to any number, let's use 2 again. 2 plus 0 equals 2. That's my answer. Identity just means that I am identifying that anything plus 0 is itself. So if I had 3,280 plus 0, what is that going to equal? Well, 3,280. So we're identifying the number with identity property of addition. Okay, so those are the two that we've studied so far. So CPA, community property of addition, and then IPA, which is identity property of addition. All right, easy concept so far. All right, So let's go to the next one, which is going to be commutative property of multiplication. Okay, so we've had so far commutative property of addition, that is addition, identity property of addition, but now we're going to go with CPM, which is commutative property of multiplication. All right, so what does that mean? Okay, so I know that 4 times 5 equals 20. I also know that 5 times 4 equals 20. These are both commutative properties, which something times something equals an answer. Okay, commutative property. You can think of the word commutative as I have two things that I'm multiplying to get an answer. Commutative property. Same with addition, right? Because I said 4 plus 4 equals 8. Commutative property of addition means I'm adding two things. Commutative property of multiplication means I add two things. And each of those has a fact family, right? 4 times 5 equals 20, and 5 times 4 equals 20. Okay, not too difficult. So with commutative property of addition, I can also say this: A times B equals B times A. So if A equals 4, B equals 5, I could say this: 4 times 5 is equal to 5 times 4. Both equal 20, right? But again, commutative property of addition. So we can also have identity property of multiplication. Well, do you remember identity property of addition? We said that a number, let's say 2 plus 0, equals itself. Identity property of multiplication means this: it's a number times 1 equals itself. Let me give you an example. If A is equal to 2, 2 times 1 equals 2. That is identity property of multiplication. Whenever you see identity, we're looking for whatever number is being multiplied as the answer. Okay, so identity property of multiplication is an example of A times 1 equals A, or 2 times 1 equals 2. All right, so review: commutative property of addition, identity property of addition, commutative property of multiplication, identity property of multiplication, and now we're going to do property for zero multiplication. All right, what does that mean? Well, we know that in multiplication, if we have any number 3 times 0, right? There's the z for 0. It is always going to equal 0. I don't care if the number is huge, 3,500,220 times 0, it's still going to equal 0 for our answer. So the property of zero multiplication just means that any number times 0 equals 0. That's a property of zero multiplication. Okay, so commutative property of addition, identity property of addition, commutative property of multiplication, identity property of multiplication, property of zero multiplication, and we have one more to talk about, which is going to be something called the associative property of addition and the associative property of multiplication. Okay, so we're going to add two, and you'll notice that associative is the common word here. Okay, so the only difference from commutative property of addition and associative property of addition is this: we said that A plus B equals B plus A in commutative. Okay, two numbers equals the same two numbers, just reversed. Associative means this: A plus B plus C. All right, so there's a little bit of a difference in the look here. All right, equals A plus B plus C. In other words, we have a third number that's going to come in here. looking like C, but we'll add a number. But you'll notice that we have parentheses around two of the variables. It's going to be the same thing. So if A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, C is equal to 3, we're going to say that 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 1 plus 2 plus 3. 1 plus 2 is 3 plus 3 is 6. 2 plus 3 is 5 plus 1 is 6. So 6 still equals 6. We know that. That's the associative property of addition. Okay? Different than commutative. Commutative, there are no parentheses and it's just two numbers plus two numbers. Associative property puts these parentheses in and adds another number to it or letter to it. Okay? So the same is going to be true of the associative property of multiplication. Okay? APM is going to look something like this. A times B in parentheses times C equals A times B times C in parentheses. So same thing. These are going to still equal the same number on both sides, but this is the associative. In other words, if you see parentheses, you know that you're already talking about associative property. It just depends on if it's showing a multiplication sign, then it's multiplication. If it's showing an addition sign, then it's APA for associative property of addition. Multiplication, associative property of M, multiplication. All right? So that's the lesson, okay? The lesson as far as that is concerned. And what they're going to ask you to do is to name the properties. So I want you to turn the page to 16 and look at example 1. Okay? Example 1 has A, B, C, and D. So A says 5 times 3 equals 3 times 5. Well, first of all, we know that we're talking about multiplication, okay? And because there are only two numbers and no parentheses, that means it's associative property. So associative property of multiplication is what the answer would be. What operation are we using? And I let students abbreviate. So APM is our answer. That's for A. Look at B. B has parentheses, and notice B says 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals 3 plus parentheses 4 plus 5. Well, we know we have parentheses, so we know that we have, oh wait, excuse me, it's not associative. What in the world? Parentheses means associative. I apologize. It's commutative property of multiplication. Good grief. Let me get it right here. Okay. This with parentheses is associative property. And what are we looking at? What operation are we doing? We have addition signs all over the place, right? So it's associative property of addition. So B is APA. So A, C, P, M, commutative property of multiplication. B is APA, associative property of addition. Look at C. 6 plus 0. 6 plus 0 equals 6. Well, we have addition here, and we have a 0, so that means it is 0 property of addition. Okay, and we've seen that as well. All right, 0 property for addition is simple to see because we've got that. Okay, right. We can also call it identity property of addition. Okay, because we're identifying 6 as the number plus 0. Last one, 6 times 0 equals 6. D. Well, we know that that is property of, it's multiplication, and we're multiplying against 0, so we're going to call that property for 0 multiplication, PZM. All right. So for example 1, that is your answer. And all of the other examples are very, very similar to that. Okay? All right, so your lesson today, lesson 2, you are going to work problems 1 through, let's say, 28 today. Lessons 1 through 28. And actually, I'm sorry, let's go 1 through 30. 1 through 30 today. And if you have questions, I'll be around to have you ask them and help you through those questions. So we're going to work all the way through those and see how we do. All right? Hopefully you have a good lesson.